What's happening, Pod Squad? Welcome into another episode of the Stripe It Like It's Hot podcast, sponsored by Mighty Line Tape and Laser Pavement Solutions. Somebody told me, Craig, that the podcast should directly feed into the pavement business that I own. And it dawned on me, like, I always separated them. And he's like, you need to, like, put it on, like, sponsor it, all the backlinks, all the web stuff. He's like, your podcast needs to support your pavement company. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Anyways, joining me very last minute because he's awesome is Craig Macdonald. Previous guest on episode, what number were you on?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
I don't know. You think that's a tough question? Wait, I'm gonna grill you. No, there's no questions today. I think you were like 65 or something, 70. No, there's no tough questions. I'm grateful you jumped on. We're gonna do like fireside style business chat because you're like my favorite person to talk business with. So we're gonna do it.
Cool.
What a nice compliment I gave you.
That's a great compliment.
Here's a not nice compliment. You're a jerk. You moved. Where are you right now? Are you in Seattle or Vancouver or California? I don't even know where you are.
Yeah, so I'm right now I'm in Vancouver. I haven't moved officially really anywhere, but yeah, I kind of moved away from Prince George, packed up my stuff, and right now I'm in Vancouver.
And if you were to summarize the motivation for this, I'm not surprised. For the record, like you and I talk a lot, I'm not surprised you're dipping out. But what is the motivation?
Yeah, I think that first of all, I'm pretty young, and I've been in Prince George most of my life. And then after hearing like just listening to other people's experience about moving out of their hometown and just kind of seeing firsthand, just traveling a lot, kind of seeing what's out there. I just thought there was maybe some more stuff I could experience in bigger places, bigger markets, and just kind of live like a city life essentially for the latter half of my 20s. So I was kind of for a while I kind of wanted to make a move, and then yeah, it just came about. I kind of seen the new year coming up and kind of where our business was at, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense to kind of go out and see what's out there because yeah, once you travel a lot, you realize you go to these cities like New York and Vancouver and everything like that, and there's just so many people. So I think when you have the hunch, whether it's like start a business or move out of your hometown, it's like sometimes we think it like matters so much. But realistically, if you want to do something, then you just kind of do it and it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I kind of took the leap and now I'm in Vancouver and it's a lot warmer than Prince George, so it's nicer that way.
Dude, shut up. Whatever.
It's a big market, so I'm excited to see kind of where I go from here.
Yeah. So for our American listeners, that's Vancouver, British Columbia, not Vancouver, Washington. I think there's like 3 million people now in Vancouver, BC. It's crazy. Growing like a weed. Okay. You know what I want to talk about? Because I feel like, you still have this business here, which if you want more information about, go back to episode whatever and go listen to Craig Macdonald and how he electrified this city with Shine Property Services. Dude, the signs are still up everywhere. It's unbelievable. It's like the alien invasion of Prince George, except it's Shine Property signs. It's just the coolest thing ever. And now you got the Shine Club and just cool stuff. But no, I want to jam with you for a little bit about how you make strategic business decisions. So, going to Vancouver, I mean, you and I have talked a little bit about what, kind of the ambitions you kind of have, what you might do. But I want to start with like the business you grew, basically, Shine. Like this time of year in your industry and definitely in the pavement industry, like everyone's just breathing and catching up, right? Even if you're in a part of the world where you can do your pavement work, and it probably snowed last week there anyways. It was snowing in Florida, bro. You see that?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I got a guy I work with in Louisiana, and he's like, he literally couldn't drive to his office yesterday to make our Zoom call. And I was like, oh, well. But yeah, this is the time of year where everyone's breathing, and they start thinking about the next year, the upcoming year, and they're like, trying to figure out what buttons to push, what levers to pull, how to shake the tree, get more stuff to fall down. So how do you decide what to do? Because I know, and the reason why I wanted to ask you this is because I've told you this before. You're going to go like way farther than me in business. Like I know it. You're a motivated dude. And you've got like 8 years, 7 years on me or something. So yeah, you're going to do it. How do you approach what to do in the business to grow it and why?
Um, like what do you mean like approach like kind of like in the off season, like specifically or just in general?
So you're like Shine is predominantly, right? Like residential services, so windows, gutters. So like put yourself in the Wayback Machine like 2 years ago. So company's still growing. You're getting more trucks, more people. You're growing the team, and I know you. I didn't know you back then, so I don't actually know. But I know you well enough to know you were probably like scheming, like what's the next thing? What do I do next? What do we do? Do we add more services? Do we add more whatever? Like what's your method for doing that?
Yeah, I think that like if I told you how many times I've ran a budget from December 1st till now, it's probably like 40 times. Reiterating a budget, managing like my personal money, managing my like how much money I'm going to throw in the business, and just scheming for next year on what I'm going to do. So I think it all comes down to I think it comes down to what you want. It's all based on what you want, right? But I budget everything super well because in the off season you have to. I look at where I want the business to be, like what I want to do personally, where I want the business to be, and what kind of impact I want to make. And then also this last year I've looked at where I am in my life and being like, okay, like what do like Hermosi talks about like having like entrepreneurial like swings at bat. And he says like if you had like one every 10 years and you're 30, then you pretty much only have like four more. So it's like if you're gonna swing the bat um in those years, like what do you like you don't want to waste one, like you don't really want to waste a year if you're trying to grow. Um, so I've thought about that a lot. And then it for me it all comes down to a budget. Like I run budgets. Like last year I went to Thailand and I ran like a Thailand budget. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, those are a couple of things I do for planning, and then it's just like like I have to buy another truck here. So right before we got on this call, like I was just looking at trucks for like an hour, and just reaching out to people and just planning pretty much like scheming until the spring. I mean, I think in Prince George where we are, you might have a little bit longer of an off season than other people.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's kind of where some of the decision making comes in for me is just like making sure the numbers are right and then kind of like just taking chances, right? Like taking risks. Like I remember when I bought my first van, it was like 60 grand and like I literally probably had like 62 grand in the account, and people are like, "What are you doing?" And at that time I didn't never been on an Excel sheet, never knew what a budget was, right? So I think that risk taking and that chance taking just kind of poured over into my later like it's just kept going.
One of the things you said caught my ear like right away. You started. I asked you how you do strategic planning, and probably correctly, as a responsible business owner, you said budgeting. Um, I mean, I'll just simplify it. Like, where'd you learn this skill? Because there's many people out there like who run like dude 6 and 7 figure companies who don't budget anything.
Yeah, I learned it from my first coaching program. He gave us like a budget and then he made us like run the budget through the first year. Even that first time that I seen a budget, it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, I didn't know how to use Excel sheets. Like, I didn't know. I still don't know that well, but our VA knows really well. But yeah, it was from my first coaching program, just kind of he showed us how to use a budget and it was on Excel sheets and then we kind of forgot it. Like I forgot about it for a year, you know what I
Yep,
mean?
that's what
Until the
happens,
next
man.
till the
Yeah.
till the next off season came around.
Mhm.
And then that's how that kind of went. So
Yeah. So I feel like what I was saying, yeah, Matt's going to make this seamless, but our internet crashed. So, no one even know. I should have just kept my mouth shut. No one would have known. But while your face was frozen, I was saying, like, I kind of feel like budgeting is kind of at the opposite end of everything you were just talking about with taking the swings. I kind of feel like that because I feel like the analogy of taking the swing, like, as if I'm not familiar exactly with that. Hormozy saying that he's talked about taking like Grand Slam type swings, but if his point was like you only get one a decade essentially, or like you have one decade to really make it work. Well, how many decades do you have left, right? To make it that, like, if you really want to take a swing that big and like absolutely annihilate the rest of your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or whatever, like you're going to have to do like a lot of decision making and strategic decisions that have no data to support it. You know what I'm saying? Like, am I wrong? Like, don't you have to be a little bit like, I was just talking about that this morning with somebody. I was like, he's got a growing business, striping business. He's they're doing like 250K a year, and they have a plan to like basically double it this calendar year. And like I was telling him, like you hire one person in a business like that, the whole game changes because there's just not enough. Every variable you introduce to a small business just completely changes the directory, right? So, like, does anything I said just make any sense at all?
No, yeah, it's the whole thing of like, you just it's it's not it's not comfortable at all. Like you have to make that swing, right? I think that's kind of what you were.
So to this day, you're a budget guy. Like, I love how you called it Excel sheets. By the way, that tells me you're not an Excel guy because it's like Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets combined into Excel sheets. That's fantastic. I'm also not an Excel sheets guy. That's my special skill. I don't know if I ever told you this. Ugly spreadsheets. Yeah, yeah. Do you force yourself to be that way though? Like by nature, do you want to like? Do you get a sense of calm by preparing a budget for the business?
Yeah, I like it now. Yeah, I do. I just think without the you can't do anything without a budget. Like, you can't see how it all works. Like even when we run, like for Shine this year, the goal is for me not to actively be there. So you can't do that and like forecast what you're gonna pay people and everything, like what you're gonna pay on marketing without like seeing everything out. So we take like the percentages of what it was last year, the exact same line items from QuickBooks, and then we take those percentages and we just put it into our new revenue numbers. So if you spent 7% on marketing last year, you just spend 7% this year of revenue. If you spend, so then we forecast it out like that. We forecast it month to month, and then our bookkeeper goes into our budget and she changes the numbers month to month.
Like the actuals?
Yeah, so she goes in and she updates the actuals. Like so she'll like we have our line items there, they're the same as QuickBooks, and then she'll go in and update the actuals month to month so we can see where we are. Just to make sure that we're not overspending, which I mean, I have my finger on the pulse probably too much for that stuff, but it's important, right? So, I mean, I don't think I would be the owner that kind of gets to the end and is like, oh, we're not profitable. Because like I look at the QuickBooks like quite a bit throughout the month. I'd say probably like once a week, sometimes more. Obviously sometimes it's not reconciled, but yeah, she goes in, puts in the actuals, and then we can kind of see where we're at.
Yeah, I don't. For what it's worth, like I don't. That's probably not a bad thing. It's not like you're micromanaging. Like you're just keeping an eye on things, right? And like you want.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think just like sometimes like just sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, we did X amount profit for November." And then I'll look the next day and like she added some expenses and I'll be like, "Oh, dang, we did it." And then you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes I look like that, but because everything has to be reconciled, but I mean, yeah, I do keep like a pretty tight pulse on that side of it for sure.
Fair enough. Did I ever tell you about the PI, the predictive index assessments we took at Laser? Did I tell you about those?
I think it was is that the sales test or no?
Not that one. That's a great one too. Objective Management Group. No, so in top contractor school, we got access to it's called the predictive index, and it's been around for quite some time. And I'm going to butcher the explanation of it, but the idea is like it's only you only have to answer two questions. It takes a little bit of time to answer them, but through those two questions, it charts out on four graphs how who you are basically as a person, and it is very scientifically and psychologically validated. Like it's actually I remember Eric saying like where you score on this PI index is basically who you are genetically as a person by the time you're like 7, 8 years old, and it's only in four ways. And one of the key ways, I appreciated this assessment so much is because it has four drives on it. So like an A, B, C, and D, and you can think of a drive as just like a horizontal chart. And the closer you are to center is where the averages of people, and whether you go left or right tells you how much or how away from that particular piece of information is. So one of the D drive in particular caught my eye because the D drive is the information channel. So basically it's how do you process decision making, sorry. How do you process decision making? And when I took the assessment, my D drive was so far on the left, like it was a very low D drive, which means that I'm the kind of person genetically that doesn't require a lot of information to make decisions, which is great when you're starting a business. But if you actually want to scale something foundationally, not great, because you need, when the business gets bigger and more complicated, you probably need to not make quick, potentially ill thought out, reckless decisions. So I wanted to ask you your opinion because you've told me some of your audacious goals, and I think you're going to do it. If I were a betting man, I'd bet on Craig Macdonald. I wanted to ask you about like everything you were saying about Harmosian taking swings. I guess my question is like, how do you do it? Like one other thing I'll say, maybe this will get me back on track a little bit. Like I've had the experience before where I've shown data to someone, like another business owner, and for them to be able to see for themselves, like you have the data to justify the thing you're trying to do. So whether that's going full time in your business, that's a big thing for stripers, right? Because a lot of them do it part time. Or should I hire this person? Do I have the cash flow? Long term is like, so a lot of business owners, they're like, I just don't know if I can do it. So you show them the data that says like, based on the numbers, like this would be a completely fine decision and it'll support the growth of the business, but they don't do it anyways because it's like, it's up here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
so
go.
like I don't have like I don't run a $100 million company.
Yeah.
I don't I don't have the win yet, I don't think, but I can definitely touch on this. Like it come like it's gotta come down to the person and what they actually want. Like, like you can't tell me that you want like you can't tell me that you want $1 million, but you're not willing to like do the things that are necessary to do it. So I think that a lot of people like they say they want something and they think it's like sexy to say that they want it, but then they don't actually do it. You know what I mean? Like say our revenue numbers this year were, I was just talking to a guy, our revenue numbers were 250K over his, and I thought we had a horrible year last year. I thought we screwed up, everything like that. He was totally fine with his numbers. So I think it does come down to like I think it's just how some different people are built, right? Like some people play professional sports, some people some people are built to be high achievers, some people are built to run a guy in a truck. You can learn how to, but you have to deep down want it. You know what I mean? I don't think it just peppers through you. You can use education and stuff like that, but from the most part, I've seen that people who actually want it, like if you actually want something, like you can get it, right? And if it's unlocking the mindset, like you're saying, like hiring that first technician or hiring the office lady, that's a huge thing in our industry is like people won't hire office, they won't hire someone to answer the phones. And dude, from me hiring like my first technician to me hiring someone in the office, it was like probably like um 2 weeks. And then me having a guy from the Philippines answer our phone now in Canada. Like it's obviously there's somewhat risk, but I don't see the risk. I see like I'm not answering the phone. You know what I mean? Because if I answer the phone, then to be honest, I think I'm just kind of too lazy now I would, but I just don't want to. It'd kind of be like if you were, I've been doing a lot of like Naval Ravikant stuff, and he says he's like,
Mhm.
he's the guy who he wants to make a ton of money, but he doesn't want to work, and he's not scared to say that. And he's like that guy in Silicon Valley. So I think that, yeah, I think it just comes down to who you are. And then you end up knowing who you are. Like I remember being at a coaching program 3 years ago, and there was this guy there, and he was in this other coaching program 3 years prior to that. And I was like, oh, how was that one? And this one was like a super high ticket. Like these guys deal with contractors. They're huge. They're from Canada. And he was like, oh, it was horrible. They didn't even give you the systems. And like 3 years later, I have 6 people on my team. I have a GM, and he's still cleaning windows. So it's 100%. And we were in the same program. We had the same thing lined out, the exact same opportunity, right? It's 100% just your mindset. You got to unlock that. However you do it, I couldn't really ring to that because as soon as I seen like, okay, I can knock doors and get money, and it was like, okay, I can like hire people and like get them to clean the windows. And then I was like, I don't want to go to this. I don't want to go to this callback. I don't want to fix a pump on the truck. Like I just don't want to do that. Like I'd rather just sit in the office and do the sales. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't want to do this now. So like now let's get rid of that. So I think it just like as you grow as an entrepreneur, it just naturally delegates because you're growing as a person, and the only way to grow is to find people to fill your seat. Does that answer your question?
No, it totally does. So, you started out by saying data, right, and spreadsheets, but everything you just said, you have to have an element of the lazy way of saying it is like you have to take some risk. You have to invest in that office person. So in your industry, you have to invest in that office person sometimes without being able to calculate the ROI because like an office person makes you $0 in revenue, right? So how do you know when to do it? Well, at some level, you have to take a measure of risk. So I'm going to ask you a weird question because you've been in a lot of networking groups, not like in a bad way, like similar to me, right? Like I got in cahoots with a business mentor early and then his group program, and now I'm in another one for pavement and top contractor school. So I'm constantly, interacting with companies big and small. And the question I have for you is like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, dang, I'm that person who he was just talking about. Like I say I want it, but I don't think I actually want it. Do you think in your experience, based on who you've seen, do you think that's something that can be learned? Or do you think that the people who don't have it are kind of just stuck?
I think you have to learn it, but you have to submit and you have to be willing to lose. Like, you can learn it, but you have to submit and you have to be willing to lose. If you told me right now that I'm willing to lose it, man. Like I don't care. Like
You don't
it's
fear
just
you don't fear failure?
I fear failure, but I think that have you heard that stat that every single millionaire goes broke at least once? Like, have you heard that stat or something?
I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
with that.
S- So there's like a stat there. Two richest clients that we have in Prince George too. They both went broke at some time during their career. I think there's something there with like just not really. And obviously, I didn't start my business with a family or any obligations at all, right? Like I didn't have much. I was living in my parents' house, and then I moved out. I had a rent, but I didn't have like kids and people that support, so I can't really speak to that. But I would say that you can learn it, but you have to be willing to step back. And typically, when you have to step back, you have to, you're gonna have to, you can't go buy like a truck and like the second boathouse and like all this kind of stuff, right? With the money, you have to invest that money. So if you end the year with say 100K in your bank account or whatever, like you have to say, okay, I'm gonna do 20K, go hire someone in the office and just try them out. Okay. So what do you know? You're gonna hire someone in the office. You know that what? It's extremely stressful. They might be horrible and you're willing to burn 20K, right? And once you subside with that fact, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna try it. It's gonna cost me 20K, or it's gonna she might be horrible, so I might have to like text her a bunch and always on the phone with her and just trying to manage that, right? Like you have to be willing to do that. But I think a lot of people say, oh, we have 100K, let's go to Hawaii. Let's let's go finance a new car, right? Oh, Cam, we need that one laser painter that does it like it does it infrared paint or something, you know? We need the pressure washer that does like such a good job, but like those things don't really matter and they don't really push it forward, you know? What actually matters is like just get that team in place and be willing to lose on that team. Like, you know, for the last 2 years of my business, I've paid myself 4 grand a month. So my technicians have actually been getting paid more than me. And it was just because all that money just stayed in the business and I was willing to lose it all just to grow it. And like I said, I haven't grown a massive business or anything like that, but you have to be willing to just take that punch at the start and just like, you know how it is having employees, right? Like they're not going to be there's babysitting, right? There's always going to be stuff like that, but I think people think it's going to be perfect and then they bring someone on and then they realize it's starting to actually lose them money before make them money and then what happens is they just end up quitting and they're just like, "Oh, I'll just do it all myself." And then you call them and the worst thing is when you call a contractor and he's like on the roof or something. I remember I used to answer phones on the roof and she's like some old lady's calling me to get her gutters cleaned and like I'm angry that she's calling because like I'm cleaning a gutter. It's like it shouldn't be like that. Like, you should pay someone like 30 bucks an hour to deal with Miss Smith, get her gutters cleaned, get the lines painted get when you hire like that too, it gives your customers such a better experience as well. So yeah, you can definitely learn it, but you have to be willing to risk the initial capital and the time and all the resources to be able to like get past that step, You know that too, so.
Yeah. I think this is what you were talking about. I Googled it while we were talking. This is from TimothySykes.com, who I actually don't know who he is. But I haven't checked the research on this, but he says the average millionaire goes bankrupt at least 3.5 times.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool how um like I was talking to a guy that owns he used to own a lot of liquor stores. He said he had 3 million bucks in the bank account and his payroll was running on Friday for 3.5 mil. And he was pretty much broke at that time and he was running like massive numbers. So um you gotta if I guess if you wanna run big, then you gotta because it just happens at other levels too. Like I just had a buddy who had like, he's 300 grand in the bank account and he's dipping into his credit line to buy more trucks. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like there's always like that. You just got to risk it. You know what I mean? And without that, it's a little tough if you're comfortable and you're just trying to um you're just trying to stripe lines without like or clean windows without like taking that initial risk to like really get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. But it's funny when I think most people who are crazy enough to start a business in the first place, which is takes a measure of courage and audacity and fortitude to even do that. Like, I would say most people are willing to take a measure of risk on themselves. You know what I mean? Like if you So I'm thinking for me, like I played very conservatively when I started from a people component. And to a certain extent, equipment component too. Like Craig, I tried to make as much revenue as possible, like with the equipment I had, not buying crazy fancy stuff. But like, I was always willing to risk like going after. I remember my first airport job, like that was terrifying, man. Like I was like, yes, it's just paint on the ground, but it's completely different beast when you're on the air side and you got people watching. But like, I was going to be there, so I was willing to risk and bet on myself. I think it's a lot harder when you have to start betting on people. So for you, I mean, you still have the business here. It's now like 700 miles away. I converted that to miles for most of our American listeners. So yeah, you're 700 miles away. So you're betting on people. That's a big risk.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I see it the total opposite way. I just see it as the risk is me being there.
Whoa, you think the risk is you? Why?
Just because I see that there's more, like there's more out there. And I just feel like
Yeah, but what's the risk?
I feel like the risk would be me staying in a spot where I don't want to be when I'm 25, not leaving that business there to be. You know what I mean? The risk there's definitely risk in there's risk in there's risk in leaving the team there to run, but there's also risk in being there and not growing when you're like in such
Ooh.
a pivot. That was deep.
That
But
was
there's also that's the risk, dude. The risk is staying where you are. You know, that's the scariest thing to me is like I felt like we did a good job up there, and I think we did a good job, and I might be up there in the next 2 months saying, "Holy dang it, I screwed up," right? And I might have to go fix it. But at the end of the day, I think the risk is not taking that, not following what you think is right, you know.
I'll bet you if you took the same predictive index test, I bet you and I would score pretty similarly, for good or bad. I scored. It assigns you a name. There's like 16 different names, like altruist and captain, and all this stuff. I got assigned the name Maverick because it's an innovative, outside the box thinker who is undaunted by failure. And the funny thing is about that, like when I look at the first 2 years of what was laser line painting, me painting parking lots, dude, I did not operate that way. Like yeah, I took some chances with like the airport project and stuff, but like hiring my first person, agonized over it. Upgrading the equipment took forever. I regret it. Should have done it sooner. There's so many things that I actually do regret, not in like a agonizing way, but like had I gone back, like, whew, I could have put way more fuel on the fire. And now I'm find myself going closer to the way I actually score on that assessment, which is where I feel the most comfortable. I feel the most comfortable making those. I don't want to use the word chaotic, but like decisions with the very little information. Now, as a company, we're trying to use data better in our company and like to figure out where we move next. But I would be willing to bet you're probably the same way, undaunted by failure. How old are you again?
2024.
You're 24. That's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, if you listen to Gary Vee, he says 50-year-olds are young. So he's like, guys like you and me, Craig, we got lots of time to figure it out, but you don't see it that way, do you?
So like people say like because like when you start doing stuff that's out of the norm, like they start like saying stuff and it's like, even if they're not saying stuff, like say you go hire the first employee, they're gonna say, oh, oh, can he do that? And can like, they're gonna try to like push you in the way that like they think it should be. I've had that so many times in my life, but I mean, from the way I look at it, like me and you could go do drugs under a bridge for 10 years and still be millionaires by 50. Like you could just with your knowledge. Like couldn't like you could 100% do that. So it's like if you could actually like just take 10 years off, obviously you need to live and stuff like that, but and still achieve your goals, then what's the big deal? Like, like why is it such a big deal to hire the office person? Like why is it such a big deal to like have a team in Prince George without me there? Like, it's just it's built up in people's heads, but I think and I sound calm right now, right? When I'm making these decisions as you, like sometimes it's stressful as hell. Like this morning I was like breathing hard and stuff in the Starbucks. Like I was stressed, but I mean, I just see it differently that like, we're here for such like a finite amount of time. And it's like if I can't do exactly what I want to do, then like what's the point, you know?
I totally get it. I totally get it. Just popped in my brain thinking about what you said. I honestly, I don't think there's any business decision. I'm actively thinking. You can see me like really working on this one. I don't think I can't think of a major business decision that I'm like I should have gone a little bit slower. I should have like delayed doing that thing. Whether it was like if I saw on the Wayback Machine, like I should have bought a nicer piece of equipment when I started. I don't regret starting the business at all. I don't, you know, I kind of wish that I had hired that first person sooner. I definitely wish I hired that first person sooner. I wish I hired our operations manager sooner. I had a chance to hire him 6 months sooner than I did. And I literally told him, I don't think we're ready for you yet. And now I'm like, what a mistake. Like, it's only 6 months, but like, we're fortunate to still have him. Like, I should have done that sooner. I can't think, yeah, man, I can't think of a single decision where I was like, I should have gone a little bit slower. And maybe it's because I'm still standing here breathing, but like, like even decisions I've made that did not work out good. Like we've done projects that went terrible, like literally upside down on the job costs. And do I regret it? Well, sure, I regret. Maybe I don't like the outcome, but like we always learn something from those too. Like I don't think there's a single one I really regret.
I'll give you one here. I remember you were heading up, you were like doing a job on University Hill the other day, and you said, or the last year, and you were like, this job's messed up and stuff like that. Like, what happened on the job?
If it's the same one I'm thinking of, thankfully it wasn't like terribly.
No, I'm gonna stop you here. You're looking in the sky.
What does that mean?
During that day, it was the worst thing that's ever happened. Looking back now, you don't even really remember, right? So I think that that's another thing in business. Like people say to me, like they're like, "Oh, like, some days like I'm so like this is the worst thing that's ever happened." Do you remember how many bad things happened last April to your company? And do you remember any of them?
Last April.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the craziest thing. So like
Oh.
it's all just it's just that day-to-day jargon, right? Of like, yeah, it sucks sometimes, but like you don't actually like it is it's insignificant, right? Because like it sucks during the moment, but like if you asked me last year how many jobs that we lost over $1,000 on, I guarantee you there's probably like five, but I can't think of one of them,
Mhm. Yep.
you know? All I think about is the good things that we did, the steps that we took forward, and the risks that we took, right? I don't really think about. I couldn't name them. I don't know if you could, but I couldn't.
It's funny. I was in November at the end of the paving season. I built had a list going of all of our projects sorted by gross profit. Like I can't remember the worst ones. Like I remember vaguely some of the numbers, but like yeah, I don't even I can tell stories about projects that I was like, man, you wouldn't believe how we messed this job up in Smithers, BC. I can tell you the stories, but like I don't know. The most catastrophically worst thing that's ever happened to me in business ever. Um, and I hope this stays that way because like thankfully no one's been like hurt and any of the companies I have, no one's died. That's what I actually care about. But like the scariest thing that's ever happened is we were like 13 minutes away from bankruptcy.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah, but even then, it's like somebody actually on the top contractor school on Wednesday, we were talking about making decisions under pressure and how we react. And Eric singled me out on the call, and I said that I was like, yeah, I've got a funny story about almost going bankrupt 13 minutes away. He's like, were you like freaking out in the moment? And I was like, not really. Now I think that's kind of a genetic blessing. I think like you can go too extreme with that, but like, yeah, just well, okay. Let's say it happens, and I didn't get the money in the account 13 minutes before it was due. Literally 4:32, the money hit the account to pay a vendor. If that happens, and the money doesn't come, I'll go get a new start a new business number the next day. Like, yeah, it sucks, but as I like to say, and if you're listening to this in Canada and the U.S., if your business fails, guess what? Nobody chops your hands off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Like whatever, just reload. What did I just read? I don't know what the stat means exactly, but the point of that is like most people who have been successful in their business got there through messing up a lot.
Yeah.
So let's go mess some stuff up.
Yeah, and how do you mess up? You just take those risks, right?
Yeah,
So
that's it.
I think that yeah, my buddy went to a shop tour the other day, and guy's 23 years old. He's doing 12 mil, and he's putting like 10% to the bottom line in three different markets. And he said, so my buddies crushed me this year in revenue, absolutely destroyed me, almost doubled my revenue. And so what do you notice about him? He said it's the same. So then my buddy does a job for a guy who's a billionaire, billionaire, billionaire. He said it's the same thing as my billionaire, like the billionaire. They just make extremely quick decisions. He said that's the only thing I noticed. He's the exact same as us, but he just makes extremely fast decisions. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, apparently they were spending like, X amount of dollars on marketing in like a market, and that he wasn't doing it in the other market. He doesn't wait a day to like call the marketing manager, like he's on the phone within like 30 seconds, like spending like more money, right? Like that, right? Like just those quick decisions, I think is huge. And yeah, it does change your life. Like I remember my first coaching program. I remember it was like 10 grand. It was like USD. It was a lot of money to me back then. And still is a lot of money now, but it was scary as hell. Like my stomach turning, everything like that. But I pulled the trigger, and I mean, like, I don't know what I would have done without it, right? Like I wouldn't known about budgets, anything like that. But I think that it just goes back to the testament of like your personality, who you are, and what you're willing to like give up.
Boom. Well, it's not very often somebody comes back on the podcast. I don't know. Has that ever happened? We brought a two-timer. I think like way back in the day I had Lewis on twice. That was before you were here. But like we never really do the fireside chat thing. This was probably my favorite one. This was a lot of fun.
That was good, man. I appreciate it.
Probably because when you used to live here, jerk, when we go out for lunch, this is exactly what we talk about. So that's probably why.
Yeah.
Just, with AirPods and a microphone in our face now. Well, I don't know. Plug something. What's happening? What are you doing? What are you working on? How are you taking over the world?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on something right now.
Oh, a little something, something? What are you a little something, something?
Yeah, we might go into something a little bit higher ticket services in a bigger market. Um, yeah, and I might be moving to a different location. So I'm just getting the logistics figured out right now, but I'm super excited. And yeah, Shine's still running good, which is nice. If you get anyone wants to reach out to me, ask me any questions about Cam, maybe we can talk behind his back or something like that. You can find me Craig Macdonald on Instagram. I think there's like two D's in McDonald. But yeah.
You don't know? Isn't it your name?
No, there's on the Instagram tag.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, my username. Come
You
on,
didn't
man.
want to pay somebody like $25,000 to buy the username or something.
I'm not at that level yet, so.
Man, it's funny. You can talk about me behind my back. I always want to ask podcast guests who I actually know really well, like, give me a piece of advice, like, and when we're going to record it. So you're going to be the first one. Give me a piece of advice. You know me pretty good. What do I need?
give you a piece of advice.
Sure. What a fun way to end this. Give me the what do I need to work on?
Damn, dude.
Oh, it can't be that much of a stretch. You won't hurt my feelings. You won't hurt my feelings. You can tell me anything. If we really don't like it, I'll tell Matt to cut it. He told me to look prettier.
Hire two more sales guys
Yeah, you might be right. Well, we
and
got.
get into paving. Get into paving.
See, I keep delaying that. I keep delaying it.
That was a
And
good advice then. That was great advice.
I think you nailed it. And that so that you don't say anything else, I'm going to stop it right there. So, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me.